Hey guys, welcome back. Today I thought we'd do something a little bit different and we are going to write a book together. I wanted to take you guys across the step-by-step process that I take in starting a brand new project or a brand new novel. I'm going to show you the 2 steps that I like to start off with when starting on a new project. The first one is brain dumps, and basically it's a way to free yourself of all of your ideas at once so that you can start building connections between them. And then the second step is going to be creating dynamic characters to support your story's arcs. If you have ever felt stuck with your writing, you've ever felt like you're going in circles and spinning your wheels, nothing is really working out, and you're just starting a brand new project yourself, go ahead, grab a notebook, grab something to drink, and let's get started. If you're new here, hi, my name is Amanda. I'm an aspiring romantasy author who is looking to debut for the very first time at the beginning of 2026. I'm currently on a 6-month challenge in order to change my life in the next 185 days. First things first is the brain dump. Now, all of you have probably already done a brain dump in the past, and I'm sure you know how to do it, right? It's just taking ideas out of your head and putting it on paper. It's pretty simple, pretty easy, pretty straightforward. But what I like to do different with a brain dump is I don't like to just take every idea out and get it down, because that's sometimes overwhelming. It also can lead to confusion at times as well when you have just too many ideas and each idea is a different pathway in your story. Like, it can be messy sometimes, and we're trying to keep things as tidy as we can to make it as easy as we can on ourselves with the writing process. So for me, my brain dumps are a bit more focused. I like to brain dump, but I like to list only the non-negotiables. So for me, a non-negotiable is an element of my story that I absolutely cannot live without. Like, if I take that element out of the story, then I absolutely don't want to write anymore, right? Like, I lose interest. So I think we all understand when we're starting a new project, there are things about the story we're working on that matter to us, that means something. And so that would be your non-negotiable, to where if you removed it, your story wouldn't be the same. Let's go ahead and we're going to take 30 seconds. Just write down any non-negotiables that you can think of. I'm going to write mine on this side as well, and I will present it to you after the 30 seconds are up, and we will go from there. Yes. Okay, ready? And let's go. Okay guys, that was 30 seconds. I hope you had enough time to write down a few ideas. The idea is not to have an entire page full of non-negotiables. It's to start off with between 5 to 10 that will give you an idea of pieces of your story before you begin. So I'm going to share my non-negotiables with you guys right now. So for my story, I chose romantasy. That's the genre. It was either romantasy or fantasy romance, and there are some differences between the two based on genre, but also on the reader expectation. And I will do a video on this later explaining the difference between the two in better clarity. But I knew going into this novel, I just have been obsessed with this idea of having a character that needs to survive the situations in the world that she's going to be in. I've just had the idea for a while, and I think that fits this story the best. That is kind of, you know, it's building in here. And so romantasy is going to be the genre. Hate to love is the filter that I'm going to write the genre, the romantasy novel through. So I decided to pick one main trope that is going to lead the tone and the pacing of the most of the story. Hate to love is like the sweet spot for me. I love a good enemies to lovers. But I don't like friends to lovers. I can't. It gives me the ick. I don't know. So hate to love is my sweet spot. It's what I enjoy. I didn't really want a darker romantasy in which the characters were going to have to either harm each other or be forced to do something that would exemplify enemies to lovers. You know what I mean? So I chose hate to love for that reason. I love a good animosity, good drama. So that feels like it's going to fit well with the story. Currently, I'm also obsessed with werewolves and witches, and I don't know where it's coming from. I've always loved shifter romances and also witch romances, and I've never really seen the two of them together. I think I've seen more like witch and vampire romances. So I thought it would be interesting to write a witch and werewolf romance, and I also want my character to have a special power and ability that gets revealed in the novel. So I don't want to share too much of that because I don't want it to be a spoiler. So next I chose saucy banter from a female character. I felt like this novel would be a good space for a character that has some really sharp comebacks, that's not afraid to give as good as she gets in some aspects. And I just find that that's something in a novel that I enjoy because it makes me feel like those characters are more realistic, because the longer that you're with someone or even just forming a new friendship, you're either going to click or you're not, right? And in a long-term relationship, you have days where you absolutely love that person, but then you have days where you're like, oh my gosh, like I need you out of my space, you know? So I think the saucy banter gets kind of close to those sorts of dynamics of what it's truly like to have a relationship with someone, even if it's misunderstandings. Regardless, it's a real relationship then. You know, it's not just a character that is flat and they're Miss Goody Two-Shoes and they never say anything wrong or they never do anything wrong. Those are characters I'd have nothing to do with them. The next item that I wanted to include is forced proximity. Because I'm writing romance, this is kind of obvious. Forced proximity is almost in every romance. Because how are they going to get together if they're never together, right? And fated mates is the next one on my list. I love fated mates. I hate insta-love, but I like fated mates because it gives the characters the option to accept the mate bond, to deny the mate bond, or to work at it, to fight it, whatever it might be. I just like it because there's more options for choice based on the character themselves. Insta-love I dislike because it takes that choice away. Magic systems. I've had this thought of having like a universe where there's more than one system, and I have an idea how that might work out, but I don't necessarily yet understand how I'm going to go from introducing that to displaying it in a novel. But the idea is interesting, so it's one that I want to include, and I think it'll work well with the characters that I'm hoping to create. The last two I have are found family and the image of a tunnel. I don't know, I have this idea of underground tunnels. I don't know where I'm going with it yet, but for some reason it's sticking to me. It kind of gives me steampunk vibes though, so I'm not sure if it will fit the romantasy novel that I'm wanting to write. But I'm interested in seeing if I can tweak it and make it work, right? Because that's the creative aspect of writing. That's the fun in it. Can you make this idea work, even if it's weird? So, yeah, I think that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. I have 9 non-negotiables for my new novel. I could kind of see the idea only because I've read so much romance. Let's go ahead and jump into creating a dynamic character. So I found out the hard way that character is the prime aspect of the story. I have heard this left and right for years, but it never really stuck with me until I spent like 4 months struggling to outline a novel and not understanding what I was doing wrong, right? I was going back and forth with myself, starting a new idea, pulling in and out pulling in a new idea or pulling out an old idea, changing my characters' personalities, and adding new things to the plot, disproving the plots as I was writing them, and then having to start back over as well. And I had to learn the hard way that I was doing something wrong, and what I was doing was I was not starting with character first. I started with plot. I started with world building. I started with an idea. Those aren't wrong. It's not right either. The only answer when starting a new project is to start with your characters first. That is how you will have less issues later on. The more you know about your characters, the more you can build your story from what you know about the characters. Because literally everything in your book is revolving around the character. It's not just the plots, it's not just the arcs, it's also the world that they're living in has to reflect that character's change in some way for the negative or the positive, right? I actually use these two techniques from two very popular YouTubers and writers that I think you guys will recognize. So the first one is Bryan Sanderson. Yeah, I use his top 10 tips for new authors and writers. I use those techniques for some of my characters. The other person that I have utilized a technique from for character creation is Abby Emmons. And she has been someone who I've been watching on YouTube for quite a while as well. If you haven't watched those videos, I will actually put a link in the description below. Both Abby and Brandon are using the core elements of character in the same way. So essentially, fear is what's the character afraid of? Want is what does the character believe that they want and believe that should be their goal? Need is what is the character unaware that they actually need to have in their life for them to be a different person or have a change. And the misbelief is essentially that the character believes a lie about themselves based on the fear that they have. Brandon Sanderson also takes us a step further by asking us to think about how are the want and the need of the character different, and why can the character not have either one of the want or the need. And essentially the want and the need are different because the want is usually an external thing. It's something that they're actively doing or actively tasking for, a goal they have in mind that they're actualizing. And that's usually the actionable plot line of your story. The need is usually the internal portion of your story and your character's emotional growth. That's how I defer the difference between the two. And based on both the want and the need, how the character cannot have either of these is just truly dependent on the fear that the character has. That's the biggest obstacle to both the internal and the external plot lines, the emotional growth, and the actionable plot line of the story. So remember 4 months ago, I was struggling to write my outline, figure out my characters, understand my story and the plot and the emotional arcs. Yeah, all of that was because I didn't have a true understanding of the characters' elements. But now that I have had those 4 months to really, truly learn my lesson, I have actually understood these core elements in a better way with more clarity. And so the way that I understand them is that fear is the denominator, linking all of these elements together. So if you understand your character's fear, you can literally solve and figure out the other parts of the core elements. You can also understand the betrayal moment in a romance plotline through the fear that the character has as well, and how to plan for that. Misbelief is literally the origin of the character's fear. They have that fear because of something that's occurred in their past that they have now created a lie around that they believe. That's the misbelief. And the need of the character is literally the solution to the fear. So it's the exact opposite, basically. The want is the result of the fear. So because of the character's fear, they are now doing this in order to chase their goal. And the betrayal is literally the actualization of the fear that the character has in a literal scene, right? So if you're struggling to visualize how your character would behave in your story, the fear is literally the answer to that as well. Fear is shown through the behaviors and the choices the character makes. So if you take a psychological aspect or a psychological approach to figuring out your character, you can literally understand what they would say or phrases that they might use, how they might behave, choices that they might make, and that will help you better visualize your character. Okay, so now that we have thoroughly talked about the character dynamic, the important elements of the character that you really truly need to work out before you start writing, I want to go through a exercise and actually create a character with you. This is going to be one that I actually use in my romantasy. I'm going to start with the fear, and I have this idea for a character that has a fear of not being worthy enough for love. And I think that could be seen as like a fear of disapproval, because that disapproval could make them feel like they need to show up and perform and be perfect and do things for others in order to receive love from that person, or receive attention, devotion, love from that person to make them feel like they're worthy of love. If you have a fear of disapproval and you constantly need to show value, you're probably also scared that the value that you give to someone is going to be not enough, right? Or that person's just going to deny it. So I think fear of failure and fear of disapproval, which is like fear of not being worthy enough for love. So that's the two fears that I want for this female character that I'm going to be writing. She has those fears because of a parental figure or a mentor that is really focused on results. They really have a strict regiment and rules that she's required to follow, and she has to show up and perform for those rules, or she doesn't get love from them or acknowledgement from them. Maybe it's more of like a conditional love sort of environment that she grows up in. So that would be her misbelief, and the lie she would form from that experience with those family members and mentor is that she's not worthy of love unless she performs. She's not valuable unless she does something for someone else. That every time she fails, that's basically proving that she's not worthy of love. Yeah, I like it. Okay, cool. So the need is also going to resolve the fear, and it'll be the lesson learned, essentially, by the end of the novel. So fear of failure, fear of lack of worthiness of love. I would say that the romantic partner of the character then would need to have the chance to show her that failing is okay and it's actually necessary, because you can't grow as a person or grow in a profession, a skill, whatever it might be, unless you actually are open to failing. And if you have a fear of failure, then you're always going to be held back. You're not going to ever make progress and step forwards into the next best thing. And then the second one would be, if she has a need for... She needs to understand that she's worthy of love. I don't know if I want to have a partner display this to her, or if I want to have a partner display to her what unconditional love looks like, and give her the confidence to understand that she is worthy of love, and then she ends up loving herself and finding herself worthy of love, which then resolves the fear. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's go with it. Okay, cool. Fear for want. This works best if you know what the character's occupation is going to be. And I have an idea, but I don't know how to conceptualize it in the novel yet. But the idea I have for my character's occupation is that I want her to be an apothecary. Now, I know nothing about potions, elixirs, herbs, anything. So I'm going to have to do some research on this. And I also want her to use magic with the apothecary skill set. So it's almost like alchemy and apothecary together. I love the idea of, you know, someone in an office and they're pouring potions and they're using their magic to enhance it somehow. And now that I know her occupation, I can figure out that if her want is what she is going to be doing, or the goal she's going to be after in order to continue actualizing the fear of failure and fear of disapproval, then her job would need to enhance that. If worst case for her is like there's a sickness she can't cure, there's too many sick people, she can't make medicine fast enough, there's not enough ingredients available to make more medicine, then that would then trigger her fear of failure, right? And her fear of disapproval, because now she can't do what she's supposed to be doing. People are going to lose trust in her and lose the feeling of value, because she can't do what she feels like she needs to in order to get the value from them. My character wants to use her skill set as an apothecary and an alchemist to heal as many people as she can. See how it all starts to connect and like link together if you start with fear? Okay, so now that we know the fear, the misbelief, the need, and the want, we can come up with the betrayal of the character. And this is either the betrayal that she does to the romantic partner or that is done to her by the romantic partner. And you don't have to do this part of the character creation dynamic immediately, but I like to kind of think it through because it's fun, right? And you basically have all of your answers already, based on the fear and the other core elements of the character. So if my character is afraid of failure and disapproval and doesn't feel worthy of love, then a great way for her to be betrayed is if the romantic partner actually does something that triggers those fears, right? So since it's romance, my main trope is hate to love, right? That means the characters are going to have animosity, there's going to be drama, they're not going to trust each other at the beginning of the novel. Use that. That is what is going to trigger the fear. So if my male main character does not trust my female main character at the beginning of the novel, the worst betrayal for her would be that he has done something that makes her feel unworthy, makes her feel like she's failed. The easiest way to emphasize the betrayal is using the filter that you are writing your novel through. So because I'm writing romance, my filter is the main trope of the novel, which is hate to love. So I'm going to use that as a way to emulate the betrayal, and I'm going to drop an Easter egg at the beginning of the novel that gives a hint that this could be something potentially that upsets the main romantic partner at a later time, right? And so if I think about my character, she's an apothecary, she's an alchemist, and has fear of failure, fear of disapproval, and wants love and wants to feel valued. The male main character must do something while he mistrusts her that will make her feel rejected. And the biggest way for her to feel rejected, or the easiest way to do this, is to disacknowledge the things that she's doing, right? So she's doing all of these tasks and everything in order to provide value. So if he does something that rejects that or dismisses that, she'll feel rejected. She'll feel that she doesn't meet approval, and she won't feel valued. She'll feel like she's failed. And so I think in that instance, maybe I could have something occur where maybe he doesn't believe that she's going to be able to cure everyone that's sick, and he does something that puts a plan in place for like a just in case. And maybe she then feels like a fear of failure or fear of disapproval, in that he never truly believed she could do it in the first place, that she wasn't powerful enough, she didn't have enough ability to make this occur and be accomplished. With this character dynamic technique, you can totally build out a very fleshed out character to use within your novel. So that is the female main character that I'm going to be utilizing in my work in progress. I'm going to go ahead and create the male main character behind the scenes, and I will introduce you guys to him in the next video. The importance of the character dynamic is that it allows the emotional growth to be depicted from beginning to end, and you can build your plot lines based off of the character's emotional growth and their core elements. And that builds a stronger story. We're done with the messy part, the brain dumping, the character creation, and I want to now go into building the actual novel itself. So you guys are going to see that in the next video. I hope that this gave you the permission to go ahead and get started, to test it out, see if it works for you. And if not, that's okay as well. Let me know in the comments what kind of story that you are currently working on, or if you have a character that you created during this exercise, go ahead and share some of those details below as well. With that said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked these cozy videos.